welcome to episode 4 of Internet Movies, Cinematary's first post-episode 500 series. I'm your host, Andrew Swafford, and I'm here with...
Zach Dennis.
Michael O'Malley.
I remembered this time to introduce my co-hosts. And we are not joined by Grace this week, sadly, because she is off in Italy watching silent films. I think the festival she goes to is called the Pordenone Silent Film Festival. It's her second year going to it, and maybe she'll report back with some cool obscure silence that she saw. I know she's also seeing like a whole slate of Charlie Chaplin stuff, which I'm very jealous she gets a chance to see on the big screen. But anyways, this episode is called Docs with Receipts. We are looking at 4 different documentaries from 2010 to 2021 that are kind of capturing different evolving concerns about the internet. Those documentaries are Catfish by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman, CitizenFour by Laura Poitras, Feels Good Man by Arthur Jones, and A Glitch in the Matrix by Rodney Asher. All good movies, in my opinion. Would not necessarily recommend watching all 4 of them in quick succession. I have just kind of done one a night for the last couple of nights, and it has been a weird headspace for sure.
It does not feel good, man.
It feels bad, man.
I did a double feature for Catfish and CitizenFour, and that was a lot.
Yeah, yeah. That would be tough for sure. But yeah, anything at the top you guys want to share before we jump into internet history stuff?
It'd been a minute since I'd seen CitizenFour.
Yeah, same.
Yeah, I think I saw it around the time it came out because it was nominated for an Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
On top of being a great documentary, we'll talk about it when we get to that point. But also, like, I was telling some journalism friends, like, top tier journalism movie.
Oh,
like,
absolutely.
Like, I feel like it should be talked more about. Like, people point to like Spotlight and She Said and like these like more narrative. I'm like, you should just watch Citizenfour. Great journalism movie.
I had forgotten how much it was about Glenn Greenwald's like publication journey there, which again, like great journalism movie. Wish the dude had continued on that path.
We'll talk about that. Yeah. All right. Well, I was kind of conflicted about how to do the history stuff this episode. I'd actually considered not having a history section at all because there's just such a vast amount of internet history contained within these movies. But I decided to, as I was putting together fact sheets for the individual movies, decided to make a little history section specifically for the various platforms that get referenced across these movies, because this time period, especially leading up to the 2010s, is like a really pivotal, era of internet history where like a lot of institutions kind of get solidified that are still very much with us today. So we've been talking about lots of like earlier versions of the internet up until this point, and it feels like now is the time we're really confronting the internet as it exists now, that we're still kind of living in. So starting with Google in 1996. So Google started in January 1996. It was a research project by a couple of Stanford University students. And it was initially called PageRank. And it was a search engine that stood out compared to other search engines at the time because it was prioritizing websites that were most frequently linked on other websites. This later rebranded as Google, and it received a bunch of large investments in 1998, including a notable one from Amazon's Jeff Bezos. There were 2 different attempts on the part of Yahoo to purchase Google, once in 1998, and then in 2002. Yahoo, of course, was, I believe, the biggest search engine before Google came around. But they were turned down by Google both times. Google relocates to Silicon Valley in 1999. And the word Google shortly thereafter kind of becomes this commonplace verb, go Google it. That actually got used on an episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer in 2002. So the phrase becoming this household name happened somewhere before that.
I think 2002 is probably about when I used it the first time, right around there.
Probably. Mm-hmm. In 2006, the word Google as a verb got added to Merriam-Webster's dictionary and the Oxford English Dictionary. And then I just have a list of all these other companies that Google acquires after that. It kind of becomes this behemoth sucking up other companies. So in 2012, it acquires the cell phone company Motorola so that they can make their little Google Pixel phones that they have now. 2013, it acquires the traffic app Waze, which I'm kind of surprised still exists as opposed to just kind of getting lumped into.
Wait. Waze is owned by Google?
They are, yeah.
Why do Google Maps and Waze exist simultaneously? My parents use Waze as an alternative to Google Maps.
Well, they're messing up.
Man, meet the old boss. Same as the
illusion of choice. Yeah,
really.
I thought it was interesting that in 2014, it acquires an AI company called DeepMind Technologies. So they've been working on the AI game for over 10 years at this point. In 2015, the whole company restructures and becomes this larger umbrella company called Alphabet. 2019, they try to enter the video game market with the platform Google Stadia, which is like streaming video games. It ended up not really panning out. Google Stadia is not a thing anymore. In 2019, they started being investigated for antitrust law violations and were actually just found guilty of holding an illegal monopoly over internet search in 2024. But as to what exactly is going to come of that in terms of the company being broken up or something like that, we're still waiting for actual movement in that direction. So that's Google generally. I also have a bullet point here about Google Maps because
can I just say what a world it would have been if instead of Google, we invested all this into Ask Jeeves.
Man,
that's the search engine we should have done.
Everybody's trying to ask ChatGPT. They could just ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves.
But Jeeves would be an AI chatbot now, so I would hate him all the same.
Yeah, he was very knowledgeable.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I like that in Ask Jeeves, it was expected you would phrase your search in the form of a question, which a lot of people still do. Anyways, Google Maps. I incorporated this because in Catfish, so much of the movie kind of takes place on Google Maps. People like poking around in Google Street View and stuff like that. But this initially started in 2003 as a programming project by brothers Lars and Jens Rasmussen. They sold the project just 1 year later to Google in 2004. The same month they acquired this project, they also acquired Keyhole, which is a data visualization software developed with the help of the CIA that would later become the basis of Google Earth. And just about a month before that, they acquired a company called ZipDash, which provides real-time traffic analysis. And Google combines all these technologies in 2007 into the Google Earth, Google Street View thing, which was constructed by way of all these panoramic photographs taken via Google-branded cars and backpacks that just traversed the globe, taking pictures of everything they possibly could. It only was initially available in 5 U.S. cities, but now it has expanded to be almost anything you would want to look at. In 2014, they actually launched Google Underwater Street View, which provides visualization of about 2,300 kilometers of the Great Barrier Reef. I tried to look this up, and it currently does not work, although there is a website making it seem like it does.
Is it maybe because they don't want to show how depressingly dead the Great Barrier Reef is?
That may be. That may be maybe for the best. I also have a thing here on MySpace because MySpace is where Pepe the Frog initially started making the rounds. But this launched in August 2003. It became the first social media platform to reach a global audience. First social media platform that I used. Though it was not the first. There was also LiveJournal and Zanga in 1999, and then a bunch of others as well. But it was acquired in 2005 by Rupert Murdoch's company, News Corporation. And from 2005 to 2009, it was the largest social networking site in the world. 2006, it surpassed Google and Yahoo as the most visited website in the world. And it also played a critical role in the success of YouTube because MySpace was one of the primary platforms where YouTube videos got circulated. After it was overtaken by Facebook in 2009, it was purchased by the Specific Media Group, as well as Justin Timberlake, who wanted to make MySpace relevant again as a platform for artists to engage with their fans. That plan did not work out, but MySpace does still exist. You can go to www.myspace.com and you will find a very janky platform for music streaming and music news. I cannot believe that is still there. I have no idea who uses it. Also,
that's actually the only social media that Michael has is his MySpace page.
That would be
I've never been on MySpace. I remember MySpace.
Man.
I remember Zanga. I think like just as a comment now that you mentioned MySpace, it is wild to me the lifespan of MySpace, the real lifespan of MySpace is like 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And we are still talking about it as like this foundational, like all the stuff you're mentioning is happening in this really condensed time period. And then it seems like in a certain sense, like everything kind of ossified into these like continents that have only drifted a little bit since like 2010, maybe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have nostalgic, fond feelings for MySpace, but I remember feeling a lot of the same things that I do about modern social media when I was on that. Like just this endless loop of refreshing the same 2 or 3 pages. and not really
the social network.
Fulfilling. Yeah, absolutely. Same year as MySpace, 2003, we get the launch of 4chan.
That is wild to me that those are concurrent. Like to me, they feel completely separate.
That's the the shiny veneer and the dark underbelly of the 2003 internet. This was launched by a guy named Christopher Poole as an anonymous message board, primarily intended for the discussion of anime. And it gets worse.
I've read all this before, but it's just so funny every time I read it.
Before he launched 4chan, Poole was an active user of the Something Awful forums, in particular a subforum titled, quote, Anime Death Tentacle Rape Whorehouse. And in 2004, the site was temporarily suspended due to the creation of a subforum dedicated to Lolicon, which for people who were blessed enough to not know what that is hentai focused on underage girl characters. And this little subforum also got busted for people posting like real life child sexual abuse material as well. It was down for only 6 weeks, and then it returned and expanded to have many more sub-communities and became a very prominent hub of various internet subcultures. People are probably already aware that it is the nexus of a lot of internet controversies like Gamergate in 2014, the memification of Donald Trump in 2015. We'll talk about that much more in depth when we get to Feels Good Man. And then our next platform is Facebook in 2004. I think most people probably already know the facts of Facebook, especially if they've seen the social network. But just to kind of, for the record here, it was created in 2004 by Mark Zuckerberg and his roommates at Harvard College. Originally, it was called Face Mash, and it functioned as kind of a hot or not game, ranking the attractiveness of female Harvard students. Then it rebranded as a social media platform called Facebook. First, it was only available to students with a Harvard email address, then expanded to other Ivy League schools and then other schools in general. And in 2006, it became accessible to anybody over the age of 13 who had a working email address.
Now your grandpa's on it, just yelling at the sky.
Yeah. It surpasses MySpace as the most popular social media platform, becomes a publicly traded company in 2012, also acquires Instagram in 2012, acquires WhatsApp and Oculus VR in 2014. 2018, it gets exposed for circulating misinformation in the lead up to the 2016 presidential election, the Cambridge Analytica scandal, people probably know the details of. In 2021, it rebranded as Meta in hopes of shifting its focus to the quote-unquote metaverse, this virtual reality platform that has yet to gain traction. Hopefully it never does. I would also point people to the great YouTube documentary, The Future is a Dead Mall, I think is what it's called, by Dan Olson, about this metaverse platform called Decentraland. It is pathetic, absolutely pathetic. But one more platform here, I already made mention to it. YouTube, founded in 2005 by 3 former PayPal employees. It was initially designed as a failed online dating platform. I did not know that until today. But it was a dating platform that had surprisingly good video streaming functionality. And then it just pivoted to being exclusively video streaming, specifically because the creators of the site noticed they were having a hard time finding online video of the Justin Timberlake, Janet Jackson Super Bowl halftime show incident.
Don't you just hate it when you can't find the quarter-second clip of Janet Jackson's nipple?
I love that that's what it started with. Wasn't there also a story about Google Images starting because of some like red carpet dress that people were trying to look up?
The Jennifer Lopez green like plunging neckline one.
That's the one. Yeah.
So, listen, it sounds like all this internet stuff was just created because people are fucking awful.
Yeah.
Specifically, people at like Stanford.
Like horny Ivy Leaguers ruining the world for the rest of us.
That's the world we live in now. So go Stanford.
The first YouTube video was called "Me at the Zoo," and it is a 19-second video of one of the site's founders standing in front of some elephants at the San Diego Zoo. In the first year, it averaged about 20 million users per month. And it got purchased by Google just 1 year later in 2006.
Boy, I did not remember that the Google purchase was so early.
Yeah, I was surprised with that too. I remember it happening way later, but
it must have happened before I even knew what YouTube was, to be honest. Like, I thought I remember that happening in real time, but I've like Mandela affected that, I guess.
I'm pretty sure I started watching YouTube in high school, which would have been, I don't know, sometime in the first couple of years of YouTube existing. But
I kind of miss the old like we're just posting home videos on YouTube days.
Yeah, I agree.
Me at the
Before
zoo.
Everything was like a 4-hour YouTube doc.
I mean, I like those too. I don't want to act like I'm not up there watching them.
Oh, absolutely. I definitely am, but it'd be better for my brain if I wasn't. In 2007, it is estimated that YouTube consumed as much bandwidth as the entire internet did in the year 2000. And in the years since, it has been the subject of many controversies surrounding its video recommendation algorithm, which has been repeatedly shown to promote videos perpetuating conspiracy theories and extremist political content. So yeah, that's the modern internet. There are a couple of sites that I left out, like Twitter, because they just don't really come up a lot in the docs we're talking about today. But I feel like that covers most of the bases of the modern internet.
You forgot how much Facebook was dominated by feminine energy, and they had to reclaim it. Dude, I'm sorry. Did none of y'all watch that video of Mark Zuckerberg?
No.
Like,
what are you talking about?
This was like when Mark Zuckerberg was doing the like MAGA turn, in like 2024 or whatever. And I think it was on Joe Rogan or whatever, him like talking about bow hunting and stuff, and just talking about how there's too much feminine energy at Meta, and so he had to, he wanted to man up Facebook, and that's why he started doing.
Came on Joe Rogan with like this gold chain and his like.
Yes. This is exactly that same interview. The same interview where he starts talking about bow hunting, and then Joe Rogan asks him about bow hunting, and it is clear that he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Amazing.
Noted #1 manly man, Mark Zuckerberg.
Oh yeah, they made a whole movie about it.
Mark
About how
Zuckerberg,
manly he is.
to engage in a little bit of the language that some of these documentaries chronicle, but like Mark Zuckerberg is such a like eternal beta. Like he just cannot be anything but that.
I mean, you could say the same about Elon Musk buying Twitter because he doesn't want people to make fun of him. You know,
I think so. Elon Musk is now in his arc of people making fun of him, but I think there was a good solid 10 years when people thought Elon Musk was really badass.
Oh,
Whereas Mark Zuckerberg has never had that era. Like
Yeah.
Mark Zuckerberg has always been this like pathetic man who just happened to like, own the most popular social media site on the web.
Well, it's like he
Sounds
makes
like
that
an
and then
alien speaking in front of Congress.
yeah.
Right.
Well, he has that. Then, like, what, 6-7 years later, he has David Fincher make a movie about how much of a fucking loser he is.
Yeah. Man, what a cold shot, David Fincher. It's very sad that David Fincher is not directing the Social Network sequel.
But that the West Wing guy's still involved. That seems like
Yeah.
the worst possible outcome.
Yeah. We'll have to see, but I would love for that to be a good movie. I think it's probably going to be about Cambridge Analytica, but it probably won't be good.
I want it to be about the metaverse. I want it to be about
be
like
hilarious.
everybody like hyping the metaverse like inside. I want it to be like, you know how the last like 30 minutes of Goodfellas is just like a dude spiraling out of control as like he tries to get into hard, as they like the drug trade is like, eating their lunch or whatever. I want that to be the Social Network too, as they like try to do, it's like Jump Into the Fire by Harry Nilsson starts. And, he's like, we're rebranding the meta, guys.
Just a series about Mark Zuckerberg embarrassing himself.
Yeah. Absolutely. I would watch that.
Well, should we jump into Catfish,
Yeah.
y'all? Okay.
I wish somebody would catfish Mark Zuckerberg. But yeah, that'll end the loop.
I'm sure it's happened. Yeah.
That'll end the loop.
Tom from MySpace. Catfish.
The last laugh.
Yeah.
Hello?
Hey, Megan?
Hi, how are you?
Your voice is not at all what I expected. I mean, she must be pretty awesome, at least from Facebook.
How long have you been calling each other babe?
2 weeks, maybe? I'm pretty good. I'm good. Last night we had a great talk. She told me about a chicken makes an egg every day. Did you know that?
Megan, I take you to my room and dry you off, touching every inch of you.
Megan is a dancer. She sings. Her sister is an artist. This is the painting of Angela that she did.
That's the mom?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know.
She's hot.
The Facebook family. Well, that's what we'll call them. I really cared about this girl. I've had a real conversation with her.
So you're full on going out?
I guess I don't know that much about her. I don't really want her getting hurt. I'm not getting hurt. So what's the next move?
I think we drive up to Megan's farm in Michigan.
This is it. This is it. Just pull up.
Do you want to drive into the driveway?
Yeah. Are you crazy?
What do you mean?
Drive into the driveway.
What do you mean?
Don't back into it.
Why not?
Because then we can't see what's in front of us.
I'm a little scared. This place gives me the creeps. Let's go.
You've just found like the tip of the iceberg.
You guys stop. Put the camera down.
All right. So Catfish comes out in 2010 by Henry Joost and Ariel Schulman. Not the last time you will see these filmmakers in this series, by the way. But allegedly, I'm going to say allegedly a lot in this fact sheet. Allegedly, the impetus for this documentary starts in December 2007. when Neve Schulman starts corresponding with a painter that he believes to be an 8-year-old girl named
who
Abby.
is Ariel Schulman's brother.
Yes. The only one of the three that's not getting a director credit, but is like in front of the camera the whole time. But he starts emailing this 8-year-old girl for some reason.
It was a different time.
As one does.
2009.
And he then begins communicating with her mother and who he believes to be her older sister, Megan, who he enters into a long-distance relationship with. He later discovers none of these people actually exist in the way that he thinks they do. And in fact, he's only been interacting with one woman named Angela Wesselman Pierce. The documentary coined the now commonplace term catfishing at the end of the film with a monologue by Angela's husband. Maybe we'll talk about that later. Joost and Schulman claim they started filming Neve's interactions with the family with the intention of creating, quote, a nice short film about a photographer mentoring a young painter and a young painter inspiring a photographer. And then apparently increased the amount they were filming once the romantic relationship with the older sister started happening. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in January 2010, and doubts were immediately cast upon the film's authenticity. In the Q&A after the screening, one audience member said, quote, I think you guys did a great job, but I don't think it's a documentary. And Ariel Schulman responded, oh, so you're saying my brother is the best actor in the world? Oh, and we're the best writers in Hollywood? Thank you, everyone. And then he cuts the Q&A short. Really,
I love the idea that like it was hard to like just type on a screen a few times and like talk to some people.
Would have been a really difficult acting job.
Marlon Brando would not have been up to the task.
Yeah.
I think.
also a bit of an obnoxious like response to
It completely squares with what we see of these people in the movie who are
That's fair.
deeply
You're right.
obnoxious to me.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
right. Now, we do know that the facts of Angela's life as depicted in the film are accurate. She was actually interviewed by the ABC News program 2020, and she stated, quote, a manipulator is what my husband calls me, but yeah, I manipulate and it's not right. I never thought I'd become so entangled in it. 2020 also discovered that these problems began when she started looking for feedback on her artwork online and was met with snide and stinging critiques. However, when she posed as an 8-year-old artist named Abby, people online were kind and accepting. The film became very successful. It was made on a budget of only $30,000, but it grossed about $3.5 million upon its release in the fall of 2010. And I remember it coming out and being a big deal. I watched it that fall with my family. 2 years later, the Schulman brothers began producing a reality TV show, also called Catfish. Ran for 9 seasons, ended in summer 2024. I have not seen a single second of this show. Grace probably has. She's a reality TV person, but we do not.
We need you, Grace.
Yeah. There were 2 spinoffs to that show, Catfish Trolls, hosted by Charlemagne the God, and Ghosted, Love Gone Missing, hosted by a Bachelorette star named Rachel Lindsay and a rapper named Travis Mills. I don't know either one of those people. There was also
back to the Charlemagne the God one.
Yeah, Charlemagne the God, just like documenting other people trolling people. That sounds kind of fun.
Oh, he wasn't. I thought he was catfishing people.
Oh, that would be great. I don't think that's what that show is, though.
Oh, man.
There were also 2 seasons of a Catfish podcast, which ran from 2020 to 2022. And a couple quick quotes from critics. Alison Wilmore called it a sad, unusual love story. And Roger Ebert wrote, the facts in the film are slippery, but the revelation of a human personality is surprisingly moving. So more we can get into later, but which one of y'all wants to share your thoughts on Catfish?
I'd actually never seen. I'm very familiar with Catfish and like the concept and kind of what happens, but I never watched this movie. I guess I just had sworn it off when it came out. I remember when it came out though, because a lot of people were talking about it.
Yeah, big word of mouth sensation.
Yeah. So like by that measure, watching it for the first time, I think out of the movies that we've watched so far for the series, like the most like quaint internet that I felt so far. Just like the old school YouTube, like just the layout, of YouTube.
Yeah,
big
lots of
chunky
documenting
buttons on the video interface.
Right.
Yeah, the idea that the internet is this wide open opportunity for so many different things. Like there is like this kind of like optimism at the beginning of the movie that I'm like meeting this really cool child who's like a fan of my photography. And like it is kind of, you do question, because like it's just like, oh, and now I'm talking to the mom. Oh, now I'm talking to like the sister's friend. Oh, and like he's talking about like accruing this whole family on his Facebook, to the point where I was just like, you had to like, something had to click. But I don't know. Humans are weird, and they miss stuff like all the time. But just as like an internet item, even like when they are like on the chase to like find the identities of these people, and like from the old cell phones, and just the 2010 eras like computers, like just the whole aesthetic of it was entertaining to me. As a story though, God, these guys are so annoying. They're so annoying. Neve is like blast into outer space annoying. Like just high. Like there's the whole sequence when they're like in in Colorado, and they're like coming to the realization of what happens.
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. Maybe it's just 2025 cynicism, and I'm just like, yeah, man, like. I don't know what to tell you.
The scene where he reads out the like sexts that they have like traded.
I cannot believe he did that.
Yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure we'll talk more in depth about like what he finds and like some of the kind of conclusions out of it and things. But I thought this was overall, it was okay. I definitely feel like it's important for the series that we're doing and kind of covering. Mm-hmm. But I found myself very bored and very like tuning out of it a lot of the time.
It does feel like an artifact from an earlier era of the internet in the way that some of these movies do, where like, it comes from a time when the idea that someone would lie on the internet, you really think people would do something like that? Go lie, go tell lies on the internet? That
didn't say who you were?
Right.
Yeah.
I think like weirdly it's of a piece with CitizenFour in the sense of what was kind of shocking and revelatory about what it exposed about the internet at the time now is just such common knowledge, like, oh yeah, the government is tracking your every move on the internet. Like a 10-year-old knows that, right? Like, oh yeah, people aren't always who they say they are on the internet. Like that, like those seem to be like first principles about how people interact with the internet now. And so it's like interesting to see them be these kind of bombshell revelations in these films.
Yeah. And I think there is something kind of thrilling about watching that realization happen in real time, though there, of course, it kind of invites the question of whether or not it actually is in real time.
I think the
scene you're talking about, Zach, of like them just making the discovery, that's one of the things that people most often point to as saying like, I don't believe this is how it happened. This seems recreated or staged. And as a person who's watched a lot of Nathan Fielder in the last several years, it's hard for me to look at that as anything but a restaging.
I don't know. These doofuses feel like genuine enough that I totally bought that this is how it happened. I was just like, just the entire 30 minutes or so that I've spent with them, I'm like, I could buy this. I
think the thing that gives me the most pause is, why would you film any of this to begin with? Like, none of this seems notable enough to film. I think the theory that I've seen that makes the most sense to me is that they actually started filming when they started hunting down who the actual person was behind the messages, and then went back and recreated based on existing messages, like what the buildup was. That's my theory.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense why the first scene of him opening the package with the painting in it would be filmed, unless like director Schulman really does just kind of habitually document everything, which I know some people
He's
do.
like John Wilson, just walking around constantly with like a camera on his chest or whatever.
Which it could be. I mean, like, this again, like, this is early, there's this is still like quote unquote like early YouTube. Like, we talked about like it was something early on that was very like home movie driven and just kind of like random stuff that people did during their day. And so like maybe it was just kind of like, hey, like, we don't fully understand the internet and YouTube and what this is really going towards, but we're gonna like put stuff on there to like see if anything sticks.
I think that is a good point. And like, I think a big thing that was new about like what the platforms Andrew is describing about the internet, like at the beginning, like YouTube and Facebook and things like that, is the way that people chose to relentlessly document the mundane aspects of their lives, which, like, I mean, I wasn't really doing much on the internet in the 90s and 80s, when it kind of exists as Usenet and like whatever, but like those were like affinity groups basically that had formed. Right. And so you weren't just saying like, yesterday I, had Lucky Charms cereal and there were only rainbows in the Lucky Charms cereal, but that would have been like a Facebook post in like 2009. Right. Yeah. Like, and I guess it does make sense on a certain level that like the kind of innovation of like people's behavior in the social media era was, I'm going to document myself all the time so that I can kind of make a presentable version of myself to package.
I get like the little like Facebook memory things, and it'll be like, 15 years ago, and it's just like Zach Dennis is feeling great about this year's Oscar nominations or something like that.
Oh yeah, it was always your status was always phrased as this person is.
Well, and do you guys remember the period of time when people basically, it still was giving that prompt, but people were tired of doing the prompt, and so so and so is, but then they wouldn't actually complete the sentence because they were just not interested in completing the sentence.
Was it Facebook that was the prompt, "What's on your mind," or was that?
That's what when they stopped doing the fill in the blank, like your name is. That's what they started doing, is what's on your mind.
And it really did feel like just kind of a place for people to put stray thoughts before Twitter was a place for people to put stray thoughts. And I think very few people thought of it as a document that would persist into the future. That like 15 years later, they would be given a Facebook memory of, the time that you said this thing about the Oscars.
Well, I wish they wouldn't.
Yeah, really. Well, but like, I think there was so much turmoil on the internet. I mean, the .com boom had collapsed, all this stuff on the internet. And then like, you just got, all this churn of like, here's the new toy on the internet. And then a few years later, it's gone, and like people are constantly migrating. Like, I think that was like the norm for a lot of like the 21st century internet up until like the Facebooks and Twitters and like, the kind of like big, the big 5 sites that everyone screenshots on the other 5 sites, until they kind of took over everything. There was this implication that the internet was just ephemerality, that, you could troll back through the records if you wanted to. No one would really care 10 years down the line what had happened. But like 10 years ago was 2015. I mean, Facebook was, at its peak 10 years ago, whereas like if you were in 2010, 10 years ago, Facebook didn't even exist. Social media didn't exist in any meaningful way. And I think that like that churn has slowed down so much because of the kind of monopolistic, balkanization of the internet.
There's no room for competition.
Right. And no, I don't think anyone really, any just ground level users really foresaw that happening.
No. And circling back to something you said a long time ago, Zach, I think like I do feel nostalgia for this era of Facebook as depicted in the movie, because I really had the sense using that version of Facebook that I was only interacting with real people that I really knew. It was not a place for me to shop or whatever.
Yeah.
It was just a place where I could say things and my friends would see them. This was also the era that I was using like AIM, Instant Messenger, and stuff like that, and just felt kind of like an extension of that.
Yeah.
That was like a little bit more public.
And like in getting back to the movie, like that's why I can kind of buy that, like that like especially like the older sister, like kind of long distance dating kind of relationship happens between Neve and what is it, Megan is the
Megan.
the name. Because like I think at this point it's like the people who are on my Facebook now, like for lack of a better word, they're like verified. Like they're people who I've had conversations with, and at that point it's like, well, I've had a conversation with this person, they have to be like a real person. And like that in the second half, as you kind of unravel Angela's life and like her business, her hobby, whatever you want to call it, of like managing all of these different Facebook profiles, like I can kind of get that, like it was so like, they talk about it was so Wild West that there were so many like, opportunities to be able to kind of exploit it just because it was so like fresh and people weren't thinking that deeply about what was happening on that site outside of like, I'm just updating and people are going to see it, but those people are people I know, so it doesn't matter.
I think like, I mean, in some ways, like what that exploitation has become one of the defining factors of the internet. I mean, like, there's like a really big question, surrounding like 4chan about like who is posting these, because it's an anonymous message board, right? And so the idea of, sock puppet accounts and things like that, like just becomes like a complete, like just a totalizing factor of the internet, even like Q, right? So like, which these documentaries don't really get into that much, but like arguably Q is like one of the biggest like catfishes of all time, someone claiming to be someone in the deep state of the US government and had like convinced all these people that that's what was happening. And it's a little bit unclear like who exactly Q was, but it may in fact have just been like one of the people who ran 8chan.
And then because it's anonymous, anybody could pretend to be Q.
Absolutely. So like that kind of collapse of authenticity of the, like on the internet is like one of the main things. And I mean, like you just mentioned the verified thing. I mean, there are like features of the internet now that exist because of that. Like, when my wife and I were starting a podcast, we had to get our podcast on Google Podcasts. We had to send a video of ourselves to verify that we were real people. To get on, or maybe it was Apple Podcasts. One of the podcast feeds or hosts, excuse me, you had to like have footage of yourself as a real person to verify that. And there's like verified on like Twitter and things like that. Like this just become like such a like foundational element of the internet. And I think also like that's like a downstream of these things have simply become more important. In 2009, like, I mean, interpersonally, it made a difference, but like in terms of like the real world, like who gives a shit if you were pretending to be someone fake on Facebook in 2009? Like, like you could scam people, but it wasn't like real world, like, meet space meaningful. Whereas now I think these things are so big that it, is akin to like having a fraudulent, like, business or something like that. It's like taken with that level of gravity, I think.
Yeah, I mean, this is more, I think, more of a lead into like the conversation we'll have with like CitizenFour. The one thing I was thinking about just watching, I watched 3 of the 4 docs for this episode, and it's to the point of like exploiting like it's just whatever internet site it is. It's like people find a way to exploit it and like drag it down into the mud. It doesn't really matter which site it is. That's all that ever happens. And like to me, that brings that's a lot of my trepidation right now with like AI, because it's like it's this like it's the new toy, it's the new thing, it's the new internet. But I'm like, we've already seen this thing that's like irrechangeably like made our lives differently. And it's so like it's just so like toxically infused now, because it was so democratized. It was so easy to exploit, you know, the pillars of society, you know, with like business, like you couldn't have necessarily a group be in the inside of like Chevrolet and like, you know, like make it toxic that way. It would have to do something entirely on its own. But because the internet is so like, it's not just like these people are in charge of it. It's, even though you could be like, these are the head of Google or these are the head of Facebook or whatever, it also encompasses all like the whole entire world around it. And it's just so like, that's so, I think that plays into some of the stuff that we, you know, you see in CitizenFour, but also just like the like mountain of like dread and anxiety that consumes Matt and Feels Good Man, because it just kind of feels like there's no escape from it.
Well, in the way that, and I mean, this is more on Feels Good Man, but like a big plot point in that is the way that 4chan is able to manifest its own memes into the real world, into like real political dialogue, and like the way that like has tangible effects on Matt's life. And I don't know, there's a weird like circularity to it where in Catfish, he thinks everything is real that is actually kind of a facade on the internet. But then there's another aspect of the internet where it's like everything is just memes, everything is just fake generated on the internet, but then it begins to bleed into real life in ways that we are still, I think, reckoning with. And it's weird. It's like the internet matters in a way that like none of us understood at the beginning, but it also doesn't matter in the ways that we thought it did at the beginning, you know?
And despite the fact that this movie is like maybe a little bullshit, like I think that actually makes it maybe more interesting as a film object.
Yeah,
right?
100%.
It is both showing you that the internet is like a place for duplicity and manipulation, and also kind of doing that to you, the audience, maybe, but you can't tell whether or not it is, right?
Yeah. It's just so early in it that like, I think watching it now, you're just like, yeah, come on, what are you talking about? That's such a, but like at that point, yeah, it's just like, oh no, I think they meant well.
It kind of reminds me of like when you see like people in the 70s talking about Watergate or whatever, where they're like, what? The Republicans would have wiretapped the Democrats, like, and like now that's just like such a foregone conclusion. But like that was a true shattering of innocence moment in like, you know, American political discourse, and in a way that like Catfish feels like a capturing of that sort of moment in real time. And maybe CitizenFour does, definitely CitizenFour does as well.
One last thing about Catfish before moving on. I think it's interesting to kind of track how the internet gets like visually depicted on film.
Yeah,
it's a weird new challenge for cinema to represent. And mostly what they do here is just show you like really zoomed in like LED screens.
I love that, to be honest.
I do like it. You know, I've seen the Social Network trailer. I liked it when they did it. I like it when anybody does it, you know. The thing that I like the most about the way they depict the internet in Catfish is they do the Muppets like travel by map thing. When they need to go from one place to another, you just see like a plane going over Google Maps.
Laura. At this stage, I can offer nothing more than my word. I am a senior government employee in the intelligence community. I hope you understand that contacting you is extremely high risk. For now, know that every border you cross, every purchase you make, every call you dial, every cell phone tower you pass, friend you keep, site you visit, and subject line you type is in the hands of a system whose reach is unlimited, but whose safeguards are not. In the end, if you publish the source material, I will likely be immediately implicated. I ask only that you ensure this information makes it home to the American public. Thank you, and be careful. CitizenFour.
So I don't know anything about you. Okay. I work for.
Sorry, I don't know your name.
Oh, sorry. My name is Edward Snowden. I go by Ed. Edward Joseph Snowden's the full name.
CitizenFour comes out in 2014 by Laura Poitras. It started in 2012 as a documentary project about surveillance more broadly, the third film in a trilogy that Laura Poitras is making about like post 9/11 America. And she initially interviewed Julian Assange, Glenn Greenwald, and others before she got contacted anonymously by Edward Snowden in 2013 under the name CitizenFour, and then he became the subject of the documentary. Snowden initially attempted to contact Glenn Greenwald, but was unable to secure a sufficiently encrypted line of communication, so reached out to Poitras instead. Glenn Greenwald had made a name for himself first as a lawyer and then later as a journalist, primarily concerned with privacy violations in response to the Patriot Act of 2001, which enacted mass surveillance of the American public after the 9/11 attacks. Greenwald, as a journalist, started writing for Salon in 2007 and The Guardian in 2012, and contributed to The Guardian winning a Pulitzer Prize in 2014. Also in 2014, he founded The Intercept alongside documentarian Laura Poitras as a way to publish information leaked by Edward Snowden. So this documentary is really like the reason The Intercept exists. And it has continued to function as a left-wing news source focusing on national security, digital privacy, and government secrets. Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras are no longer involved. More on that later.
What happened to them?
Yeah, I wonder what happened. We'll find out. While they were filming the documentary, Poitras and Greenwald traveled to Hong Kong, where they met with Snowden in a hotel room and interviewed him over the course of 4 days in June 2013. During this period, Snowden actually moved into Poitras's room in order to ignore phone calls that were being made to his room. And Poitras herself moved to Berlin immediately after interviewing Snowden, as she believed that she was being followed, and then edited the film entirely in Germany. She was praised by Greenwald as having, quote, a complete expert level of understanding about how to do a story like this with total technical and operational safety. The soundtrack of the film consists entirely of tracks from Nine Inch Nails' album Ghosts 1 through 4, which was released.
And it rules, by the way. Like,
it's so
orally, yeah. This movie is so good.
That like opening sequence where you're just kind of like reading text on the screen and hearing like Nine Inch Nails drones is fantastic. But that album was used because it was released under a Creative Commons license, meaning that it was basically copyright free. No musician was like on the hook for being associated with the documentary. It premiered at the New York Film Festival, the only movie on this podcast to not be a Sundance movie. And it was initially shown to festival screeners with sensitive material redacted and changing the screening location multiple times because she was worried that someone she didn't want to show up would show up. The film was added to the film festival's main slate at the last minute and sold out after just a few hours. After the film's release, Ronnie Sheeb of Variety wrote, quote, "No amount of familiarity with whistleblower Edward Snowden and his shocking revelations of the U.S. government's wholesale spying on its own citizens can prepare one for the impact of Laura Poitras's extraordinary documentary, CitizenFour, adapting the cold language of data encryption to recount a dramatic saga of abuse of power and justified paranoia. Poitras brilliantly demonstrates that information is a weapon that cuts both ways." Spencer Ackerman of The Guardian wrote, "CitizenFour must have been a maddening documentary to film. Its subject is pervasive global surveillance, an enveloping digital act that spreads without visibility, so its scenes unfold in courtrooms, hearing chambers, and hotels. Yet the virtuosity of Laura Poitras, its director and architect, makes its 114 minutes crackle with the nervous energy of revelation." And in December 2014, a retired naval officer and oil executive named Horace Edwards of Kansas filed a suit against the producers of the film on behalf of the American people for aiding and abetting these Snowden leaks.
Thank God for the oil executives looking out for the American people.
Really watching out for us, yeah. In February 2015, the filmmakers asked the U.S. District Court for the District of Kansas to dismiss the lawsuit, and Edwards officially dropped the case in April 2015. And it won the Academy Award for Best Documentary Feature in February 2015. More about Greenwald and Poitras later, but Michael, what do you think of CitizenFour?
Well, this is my first time watching it since it was probably 2015 or 16. Whenever I watched it around the time when it came out, and I remember it feeling electric, because it's like very, very you'll see movies, documentaries about important subjects all the time, even about recent important subjects all the time. But there are so few documentaries where it's like the cameras were around when this shit happened.
Yeah.
Like him being in that hotel room in Hong Kong. Like I remember just being, and as someone who had read, a bunch of I probably read Glenn Greenwald's writing from the Guardian about this stuff. Like, I guess it was like a year prior to the movie's release or something like that. But there's just something so immediate about like there being cameras in the room and stuff, and the kind of paranoia, like the way that like mid-interview, like Snowden like picks up a phone and he's like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot they can probably make this a hot mic if they want, and then like he just goes on like, and I just feel like, again, I said this already when we were talking about Catfish, but that sort of paranoia where like every cell phone has like a NSA agent tied to it, that kind of like folk understanding of
your CIA handler.
Yeah, my CIA handler. Like it's become like jokes and stuff because it's just such common knowledge. But I vividly remember like this stuff being revealed to me and me being like, oh man, like it was like a truly like it felt kind of watershed in the moment. And then watching this documentary being like, oh man, they were there. Like they were like with him when he was like in Hong Kong, and like, I don't know. And so anyway, I was interested to see, going back, what it would be like. And honestly, I was more struck by the aesthetics of the movie this time, because a lot of the, revelations, have, like I said, since become common knowledge. And Edward Snowden has become much more of a visible figure now than he was, at the time this documentary was made. But I was very struck by, there's almost like a poppy sensibility to the filmmaking that is not present in Laura Poitras's other films, which are oftentimes a lot more stripped back. Like, I mean, they're trying to make this feel, I think justifiably so, they're trying to make it feel like grave and like
dangerous.
Sorry, what?
Dangerous is the word.
Dangerous, yeah. They're trying to make it feel like edgy, in a way that I think is justified, but I think is striking, and like for instance, the use of 9 Inch Nails, the use of like how they kind of have the black screen and they like type out the messages to each other and stuff like that.
Encrypted,
yeah. Like there's a real like populist, we're trying to get people's attention with the film form that I think is really interesting here, and maybe speaks to the kind of political urgency someone like Laura Poitras felt about this material, that she didn't want it to be like a kind of, kind of a boilerplate like advocacy doc, or or maybe like she didn't want it to be a slog, like, I mean, it freaking jumps off the screen because of those sorts of filmmaking flares, that again, like I don't really see in her other films. Like this kind of jumps out because of that.
What feels like filmmaking flair to you? Because I like this documentary, but one thing that I thought while watching it is that it does get a little stale, just sitting in the hotel room with Edward Snowden for the vast majority of the runtime. She just kind of like sits up a tripod and lets it run.
Well, she's like editing between Edward Snowden and then like these hearings and then like the conversations. Like it's not strictly chronological.
Right. Right.
And it's not a Frederick Wiseman piece where we're simply watching like a fly on the wall, like an interview, right? Like she is punching up this interview by interspersing it with what Glenn Greenwald is doing and like The Guardian, and then like having like the clips from CNN or whatever, and kind of she's dramatizing the antagonism of like the kind of political and media establishment toward what Edward Snowden and she and Glenn Greenwald are doing, while also kind of playing up the paranoia via the encryption scenes and things like, I don't know. I think that she is more so than simply chronicling like, hey, we sat this down in a hotel room for 4 hours or for 4 days. I think she is really trying to frame it in a way that it has dramatic stakes. It doesn't, at least to me, it didn't just feel like I was sitting in a hotel room the whole time. Like it felt like I was jumping around, and it becomes almost this like international political thriller in the sense of like how we are like, oh, we're in Hong Kong now we're back in the US, and now we're like on the internet, like, in an end-to-end encrypted conversation. And like now we're looking at what CNN is doing. And then there's just like other stuff that's kind of interesting too. That's like ambient stuff that's like Edward Snowden's like flipping channels in his in the hotel room and things like that. That like, I don't know.
He's got like 2 laptops in front of him, and there's like a TV just like playing music videos.
Isn't like Selena Gomez music show
I couldn't
or something like that? Like, yeah. I don't know. I think that there is a Wiseman-esque documentary to be made out of this material, and they're pointedly not making that because of the editing decisions.
Well, it's interesting also because Edward Snowden is very pointedly going like I want you to like just report on this information, like don't make it about me, like don't make me this figure, just report the information. And they do that until they can't really anymore. But at the same time with the documentary, like you can't ignore him. You can't ignore him. And so like you mentioned the scene when he's sitting and watching like CNN talking about him. That it feels a little staged. It's kind of like we have to get this kind of interiority of Edward Snowden kind of processing like how the world is processing what he's telling Glenn Greenwald and others. And like you do have to like kind of create this persona for him, even though that's not what he wants. But at the same time, that's just like, while it's a documentary, you still have to have like a through line going, and you kind of have to have a protagonist. And so it's also just like him unwittingly like having to explore, like she keeps, going, oh, well, introduce yourself, like, where you're from, your family, and he's just kind of like, I mean, okay, it's not really, I don't really want to talk about that necessarily. And that's on the second viewing, that's what really kind of stuck out to me, is just like how he has to become a character even though he's not a character.
Did any of y'all watch sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I was gonna say he comes across as a very normal guy to the point of being boring.
Yeah,
like he has almost no personality whatsoever. But you can't really read ulterior motive into what he's doing, right? He seems very sincere. He's just a guy who like is horrified by what he learned the U.S. government is doing, and just felt like it was worth blowing his own life up over allowing other people to know that information, and I think that it hits different, the information coming to you from a guy who is also telling you like, I haven't even told my wife I'm doing this. I might never see her again, and she doesn't know I'm in Hong Kong, and my family doesn't know either.
I'm purposefully not talking to them so that they can't like trace back to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Did you guys ever see, I think it was the next movie she made, the Laura Poitras's Julian Assange documentary?
Risk. No,
Risk,
I'm not.
which is maybe, I mean, it's not as good a movie as this. And like, it shows that like the comparative like lack of ego that Edward Snowden has, because Julian Assange is like an egomaniac, you know, and so he just kind of devours the film because he is so, you know, wanting the camera on him. And I think that the movie kind of struggles with how to deal with a character like that, whereas like Edward Snowden is fairly demure in this, and again, like seems most interested in the information being disseminated, which allows for him to be a personality in the movie without it like inflating to the entire movie.
Though one related movie I have seen that I would point people towards is Camera Person by Kirsten Johnson, who is the cinematographer on CitizenFour.
Oh, I forgot that she was.
That is kind of a sort of like a compilation film almost of like leftover footage from documentaries she's worked on that is kind of put together in a way that makes you think very hard about like the sort of ethical decisions a documentarian needs to make when they decide what to depict and what not to depict. Really fascinating stuff. I forget what CitizenFour stuff shows up in it, but very much worth watching. But circling back to what you said earlier, Michael, about like the urgency of this film, I remember feeling that very intensely when I watched it as well. I didn't watch it the year it came out. I watched it in 2016. And my Letterboxd review at the time was, students in the future are going to get so tired of watching this in history class.
Optimistic to think that students in the future will be able to watch this in history class.
Exactly. Like so naive. It was, September 2016, so it was before Trump got elected.
Things are so nice right now.
I thought that and I remember talking to you, Zach, way back when we first met about like 12 Years a Slave being a movie that we would definitely show in schools. Yeah. And we have just instead pretended that contemporary history doesn't exist in schools today. We're just gonna not talk about that.
This is your like Catfish moment of like, there's brighter pastures.
Right. But watching it this time, it felt a little bit less urgent to me, and I was wondering, like, would I be better served by just going and reading Glenn Greenwald's coverage of this as opposed to hearing it directly from Snowden? And I do like Snowden as a mouthpiece in this movie. Again, I think he's a very compelling deliverer of this information. But since it is just kind of about delivering information, and it's information that I already know, I was less into it. But I don't think it's a bad movie by any means. Really, really like important filmmaking happened here.
I was good with it because it starts with like him delivering information, but then like the Hong Kong interviews stop and like and it shifts into a whole bunch of other stuff. I mean, you're constantly being inundated with like media reactions. They're showing what CNN's saying, what MSNBC's saying, etc. And then you shift into, he's talking with Laura through some sort of digital communication, but it shifts into like the Guardian newsroom, and like, they talk about how there's the one program that the UK uses they can't use in the US that's even more powerful than what the US is using. That the US works with the UK on, and the Guardian is afraid to like run the stories because it's so like infused into the government's identity and like initiative that they're doing. It gets into just the different way. I found it compelling when like Laura and Glenn are having to go to different places and like hide, because they're coming after them as well, and it becomes honestly like once it leaves Hong Kong, it becomes this like race to just find any of them. And you have these conversations where Glenn and Laura are talking where it's just kind of like, we gotta just keep bouncing around. And I think that like that it feels we talked about it, but it feels like a political thriller because it's kind of like the walls start kind of closing in, right? But in a way this is not 3 Days of the Condor. This is like like
Real life.
life.
It's actually
this is real life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just the constraints that are put on these folks is just it just, especially like in today where it's like something can happen and immediately like somebody's losing their job or disappearing or being taken away. I watched this after watching clips of like ICE in Chicago over the weekend, and it's just kind of like, this was so like almost sci-fi the way that they were able to, it felt like fake because it was all like online, and it's become so real now that it's just like man, like there is just this there's just this like big it's a joke kind of, it's to a degree now, like about Big Brother watching, but it just was so it felt so like tangible for the first time.
I think one of the interesting but dispiriting things is that as it has become kind of consensus and just kind of a first principle of the internet that the government is chronicling everything you do on the internet, it seems that people don't care that that's happening anymore. Like, I mean, some people care, right? But like,
what are they going to do about it?
Right. Well, yeah. I mean, there are things you can do about it. But there are things that are really inconvenient, like things they do in this movie. And I think that ultimately, like the thing that I've heard a lot, which I also heard in like 2014 and 15, is that, well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, why do I need to worry if they track me? Like, I hear that quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Or I just hear the kind of like resignation of like, well, hope my CIA agent enjoys my Pornhub browsing or whatever, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know. There's a way in which like there's been a normalization of it, and I think that going back to this documentary, you're kind of thrown back into the cold water of like the moment in which this was not normalized. And I think that is a value of this. Is that, and there's so many things on the internet that like not that long ago were not normal, and now people just all take them for granted. I mean, I think AI has become that very quickly, where everyone is just like, well, this is just the way it is. There's nothing we can do to stop it. This is just part of how the internet is now. And I think that like social media or short form video content or like algorithmically generated feeds, like those are all things that like 15 years ago basically didn't exist, and now are just like, well, that's just what the internet is. And so I think like going back to older documents does give you a kind of, maybe not utopian, but like, it's like the like Mark Fisher capitalist realism or whatever. It's like looking at like potential other worlds, that other futures that this could be, and whether or not those futures will be anything, I think is, we could debate. But like being able to see a world in which it was not a political norm that the government was keeping, huge hard drives full of everybody's browsing and phone conversations, I think that's valuable, because I don't feel like that's where we are right now.
Well, and it's another reminder that I think we get a little bit, and I mean more broadly, America gets a little like penciled in of like, it's like 2016, and then like that's when the evil started, and you're like, no. It reminds you of like how much of like a, people talk about like the Kennedy assassination, or the first time we went to space, or like the end of World War II as like these kind of like tectonic plate shifting moments of history. And I think we talk about it, but I kind of feel like a lot of like probably the most consequential tectonic plate shift happened 1 year into the new millennium with 9/11. And because like you mentioned, you went through this whole list of like companies and within the internet, Andrew, at the beginning of this, those were all 2003
was the big year.
And so like 9/11 happens in 2001, and all of the stuff that like ignited what Edward Snowden is talking about is ignited in that moment. And so, like, you know, again, going back to the point I made already in this episode, but like all of those things that you're talking about are going to be infected by this line of thinking, because there was just this this intense paranoia and that consumed America and consumed the American government post 9/11, and that just absolutely infected any product coming out of anything at that point.
Well, and supercharged the products. Like, I mean, like there have been like white papers and like stuff about like how to use like surveillance on the internet to like drive ad revenue or whatever. But like it's in the 21st century when that actually becomes like a viable reality and a viable business model for places like Google. And one of the things, there's a book called Surveillance Capitalism, which kind of
I was hoping
thing.
you were going to bring up surveillance.
And one of the things that this book talks about is really, really early on, like way earlier than you would think, Google was in talks with the federal government to create surveillance capacities for like all of the, you know, increased, you know, I guess surveillance of the American public via the internet. And like Google specifically was there helping to innovate it. And we have all this stuff downstream, like Peter Thiel invests in Facebook, but he is also creating like Palantir, right? Which is like yet another like intertwining of like this kind of 21st century Silicon Valley capitalism with like government like watch and, you know, government surveillance. And like, Zach, to your point, like I think this is like a convergence of history. The fact that the internet had just reached the point at which this sort of thing was viable at the exact point when the government, you know, became, you know, there was the mandate to do this sort of thing, you know, sweepingly, you know, in the US government. Like that is like forever shaped what the internet will be and what our relationship to the internet will be.
It's just I mean, I don't know. Like watching CitizenFour, I'm just like, it's the internet and its emergence since 2001 and 9, like they're just intertwined inextricably.
Yeah.
Like there's just no way around it.
Well, we should move on, but before we do, let's do a quick "Where are they now?" on Glenn Greenwald and Laura Poitras. I saved these 2 bullet points from the fact sheet earlier, just so
the Goofus and Gallant of The Intercept. I will say,
starting with Goofus, we have Glenn Greenwald, who resigned from The Intercept in October 2020, claiming that the site's editors had prevented him from reporting on Joe Biden's relationship to Ukraine and the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. And The Intercept
story of our lives.
Yeah, the most consequential news story of my lifetime, the Hunter Biden laptop scandal. The editor-in-chief of The Intercept at the time, Betsy Reed, probably still the editor-in-chief now.
She might not be. They had a big exodus a few years ago.
Oh, maybe not.
I don't know. I'll look it up.
But she accused Greenwald of presenting dubious claims by the Trump campaign as journalistic fact. And since resigning from The Intercept, Greenwald has shifted his focus to publishing on Substack and Rumble, which for folks who don't know, that is a conservative alternative to YouTube. And he has also made frequent appearances on conservative media, such as Fox News' now canceled Tucker Carlson Tonight. And at the time of recording, just a couple of days ago, Glenn Greenwald made waves for hosting an interview with neo-Nazi influencer Nick Fuentes. Whose star is rising in the right-wing media sphere. On the other hand, you have Laura Poitras, who was fired by The Intercept in November 2020, so just a month after Greenwald resigned. And this was after she criticized the site's handling of the reality winner controversy, which is a whole thing you could look into if you don't know about it, but kind of similar to the Snowden case in some ways. And Poitras said that the platform failed to protect its sources, which is ultimately what got Reality Winner arrested. And she also accused The Intercept of engaging in a cover-up that served as a betrayal of the site's core values. So you got a true believer and turncoat here with Poitras and Greenwald. We should probably take a break and come back and talk about Pepe the Frog after this.
Are you familiar with this meme called Pepe the Frog?
I've just always been into drawing.
Boys Club. It's one of the funniest comics of the last 10 years.
Feels good, man.
That was the frame that started it all. And then he had gone dark.
That the white supremacist movement has taken over Pepe the Frog.
This frog. If you want to escape hell, you can't ignore it. You almost have to go to the center of it. I'm doing everything I can in my power to shut these assholes up. Can we turn something that's become a recognized hate symbol into a love symbol?
And we are back with episode 4 of Internet Movies, Docs with Receipts. Our next movie we're going to be talking about is Feels Good Man from 2020 by Arthur Jones. And I got to say, this is, I think, the movie that is the most fun to watch of the 4 that we're talking about today. You could make an argument for CitizenFour being like the more important historical film, but
yeah,
this is the one that I would rather watch.
Only one of these involves Alex Jones getting completely fleeced in court.
That's true. Yeah, it's got heavy stuff in it for sure. You do have to like reckon with the dark heart of the internet a little bit here, but it's kind of a blast in some ways.
You see one Nazi lose a bunch of money, and then another Nazi gets punched in the face. So.
Punched in the face.
See the video of Richard Spencer getting punched in the face.
The best video on the internet, like bar none. Like the internet might have been worth it that we got that video
right there. Yeah. Okay, I had a hard time finding any sort of like behind the scenes information about this movie, but I'll give you what I got. This is a documentary about Pepe the Frog, the most famous / infamous creation of cartoonist Matt Fury, who initially designed it as part of an indie comic strip called Boys Club. He circulated first on MySpace and then in independent comic book shops. The title of the documentary is taken from the most famous Boys Club comic, in which Pepe is discovered urinating standing up with his pants and underwear around his ankles. When asked why he is peeing so strangely, he simply replies, "Feels good, man." By 2015, Pepe was one of the most widely circulated memes in the world. It was named the biggest meme of 2015 by the Daily Intelligencer. And it was especially popular on 4chan, where it was made into the mascot of what was called the alt-right movement at the time. And they were attempting to meme Donald Trump into the White House, which, if you ask them, they were successful in doing. In 2016, Pepe was labeled a hate symbol by the Anti-Defamation League, a choice that was legally protested by Fury. He was unsuccessful, but did shut down the sale of Pepe-related merch being sold by InfoWars, the Daily Stormer, and others. In 2017, you get the video of Richard Spencer getting punched in the face while he's explaining the significance of his Pepe the Frog lapel pin.
I'm so glad that made the timeline of your background here.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, slim pickings, but that's an important one. In 2019 and 2020, Pepe sort of gets reclaimed as a symbol of solidarity for the Hong Kong protests happening at the time. It premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2020 and won the U.S. Documentary Special Jury Award for Emerging Filmmaker. Director Arthur Jones has gone on to make only one more feature. It is a Netflix documentary called The Anti-Social Network, which is also about 4chan. I have not seen it. They actually aired this movie on PBS in a slightly censored 80-minute cut in October 2020. Couple critic quotes. Nick Allen of RogerEbert.com said that Jones's movie is a beacon of internet literacy about a whole new language, that memes are flexible, omnipotent, and pieces of a phenomenon more powerful than their creators. And Matt Patches of Polygon called it the most important political film of 2020.
Hell of a statement.
Yeah. And I'll say a little bit more about it before opening the conversation up. I think that the most exciting aspect of this documentary is just the visual element of it.
Yeah.
And that's true about the next documentary we're going to talk about too. But this is a documentary about a cartoonist, and it is just like chock full of amazing animation. You're kind of like constantly jumping back and forth between video of real people being interviewed and news coverage and stuff like that, and then these like really trippy psychedelic sequences of Pepe the Frog and company kind of being there's just like so many like weird nebulous spaces that the movie is traversing through visually.
Well, and some of them are animations of the comic strips that they just talked about as well.
Right. And you see the comic strips in still form, but they're really, really immersive. They really come to life with this animation. And it's just like a very colorful movie. It's just really kind of exciting to look at. And I like Matt Fury as like a presence on camera too. He comes across as he's given big Seth Troyer vibes, I gotta say.
Yeah, I can see that.
Like a good hang. He's just kind of a chill guy, He just wants to kind of live his life in peace and commune with nature and draw frogs, and you really get the sense that he just wishes he didn't have to bother about all this political shit.
There's like a line he says about something with like the politics, and he's like, it just really burnt my noodle.
It really burnt my noodle. I think he does say that. One thing I found that I thought about including in the fact sheet is apparently he got pissed off in 2020. Was that when this movie came out? It did come out in 2020. But this must have been before the Trump-Biden election, because he was apparently the director Arthur Jones was talking in an interview about how Matt Fury was also pissed when people started sending him like Biden Pepe memes.
Why would artists not want to have Joe Biden all over their cartoons?
Right.
I can't imagine.
But I think this is like a really lucid kind of delineation of this really turbulent time in like the intersection of political history and internet culture, where we're kind of going from 2015 in like the earliest stages of the Trump candidacy and the way that certain subsections of the internet latched on him when he was still like kind of considered an impossible candidate. Like even Fox News was like really anti-Trump originally because he was just seen as like a complete joke, right? But the fact that he was seen as a joke is what makes him compelling to these cretins online. And you're tracing throughout the course of this movie the way these like antisocial losers just kind of like yank American political culture around in ways that they aren't even like fully aware that they have the capability of doing, until like it starts to produce results in the real world, and they kind of get a little high on the power trip of it all. But I think it's a movie that explains like the American political moment that we're still kind of like in the wake of better than most movies I could name about American politics, honestly.
Well, I think it does a good job of like speaking the same language. It's trying to bridge the gap a little bit from people who probably aren't like chronically online, who that may not like recall this immediately. But it also is like working in that sphere in a way that like I feel like it hadn't really been done yet. The thing I really like about it initially is just that you have so many scholars of memes.
There's the occultist scholar, the meme occultist or whatever. I love that guy.
Meme magic.
Yeah.
And there's a little fun, you know, Matt's such an interesting figure in the movie, but also you just have these like this cavalcade of characters who are the meme scientists that are also great, that just give you little like small moments.
There's the guy who got rich off of rare Pepe NFT.
Oh my god!
And he like rewrites like the Pokemon song to be about like Pepe memes or something.
I don't know
right?
if he wrote it or not, but
maybe commissioned.
There's a clip of him driving around in a Lamborghini blasting this parody of the Pokemon theme song that has rare Pepe instead of Pokemon. Pathetic. This is like
It's the most
pathetic losers.
this guy is giving like a play-by-play of the auction where he got it, and it's just the most pathetic thing I've ever heard in my life.
Which thankfully Michael pointed out in Slack that like this is one of those artifacts of internet history where we can like be grateful that we've left it behind. You know, like NFTs aren't really a thing anymore. And this movie captures like maybe the dumbest possible example of them.
The thing I think that's interesting and like really unique about this movie with regards to American politics is like one of the things I think like legacy media and just people who care about politics in general since before 2015 and 16, one of the things I think those people have had trouble grappling with is the intersection of extraordinarily juvenile, stupid shit that somehow is like of national political import. And I think that this documentary really threads that needle really well of like documenting just the deeply, deeply stupid and absurd stuff that like populates the internet and is the occasion for the Pepe subcultures, while also understanding really articulately why it ended up being politically important. And I think like focusing specifically on the Pepe meme also is really helpful because like, you know, they're also, if you're just dealing with how did the internet influence the 2016 election and the rise of the alt-right, like you would be pulled in so many different directions, right? But like specifically channeling it through this one very narrow
Pepe is the skeleton key that unlocks it all.
But it really is. It's like a perfectly efficient subject because it has that kind of internet like whimsy to it. You know, like the like boys club stuff is so like early 2010s like webcomic, like is like extremely, you know, that it also, you know, obviously like, you know, blows up on like 4chan and stuff. So you have the intersection of 4chan and then becomes just the larger like white nationalist symbol. And so like it is just this kind of like perfect vessel for exploring the invasion of like internet subcultures onto the national political scene. And that's like really perfect because it's also just, as a lot of this documentary is dedicated to showing, and as Matt Fury is dedicated to showing, it's just this whimsical little thing. And I just feel like that perfectly encapsulates so much of political discourse in America, like since this moment, which is that these things that are so deeply stupid and silly and absurd, like having this unintentional gravitas to them because of how the internet works. I don't know. I think it's a great subject for documentary.
Yes, it is. It is a movie that is aware that just because something is stupid doesn't mean it is not important.
Well, it's kind of a movie that engages in like internet culture in a way that we probably should have engaged with it much sooner. You know, not just for 2020, but also for the 2024 election. And it seems like for a lot of people, I mean, it's something that hasn't been engaged with until, you know, we're recording this on October 7th. You know, probably as recently as Charlie Kirk being assassinated and coming into contact with like the alt-right internet.
And like the assassin putting memes on the bullets, you know, like that's happened. That's happened multiple times in the past like couple of months where like the bullets had memes inscribed on them. And then and I think that, I mean, that happens in Glitch in the, is it Glitch in the Matrix that talks about Elliot Rodger? I mean, that's like kind of
no, Elliot Rodger comes up and Feels Good Man.
Is it Feels Good? Yeah, like I mean that is one of the
these guys all lionize him.
Right, and that's one of the OG like meme lord turned political like violent, political actor. And again, like acting out of like memes and that sort of discourse. And I just think that I think so many people don't get it because they're not native to that. And I'm not even completely native to that. But I think that like our entire political class right now being in their 60s and 70s has made the like, whatever we want to say about Congress has made Congress like completely vulnerable to this. And in fact, the younger people in Congress are the people who are like from this culture, like Marjorie Taylor Greens or whatever are the fluent people in this. And I just think that it's positioned just the worst possible dynamic in the American legislative body, where the people who maybe could put a stop to this are so out of their league.
Yeah.
And the people who understand how to weaponize it, like one of the main figures in this movie is that Trump campaign strategist, right?
Oh my God.
And he is the guy who understands the internet the best in this entire movie. Like the things that he articulates about the internet are the most correct in terms of just like pure like Machiavellian, like how to use the internet. Like, and obviously he's like deeply, deeply evil with like deeply harmful objectives. But like you watch like Matt Fury or whatever, who clearly doesn't understand the internet. Like he's just like, yeah, I'm going to let this Pepe thing ride. Like at the beginning of the movie, like, and that's kind of, it allows it to metastasize into what it is, becomes. And it's because he doesn't understand what the internet can be. And the people who do understand what the internet can be, at least in this movie, and at least in terms of the hallways of power in the United States, are the people who are willing to use it to the worst possible ends,
Yeah, I was thinking about that a lot while watching it. Is just like, you think of just like the Kamala Harris campaign, and people like Pete Buttigieg and Cory Booker and Nancy Pelosi, and there these people who are like thinking, who are still like stuck in like Obama era, like this is the way you do stuff. And I think the movie perfectly illustrates how the internet overflowed into reality. And now you have people with much more of like a grip of like how to weaponize but like utilize the powers of the internet for good. You kind of get like sprinkles of that with Matt Fury's journey. He doesn't completely eradicate it, but he like makes inroads with it. And you see people today like Zoran Mamdani and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who like are able to utilize the internet into a more positive spin than how the right has been utilizing it. But it also just like depresses me, because a lot of the people who have the largest voices, who are very quick to stamp out those voices that I just mentioned, have no concept of it, and they never will. They're old as fuck.
Well, like you look at the Kamala campaign, and I'm sorry, I'm not gonna, we could go down this whole rabbit hole, but like early on, the Kamala campaign seemed to accidentally stumble on kind of memedom, and like two really effective means. I didn't personally resonate with like the coconut thing, but the coconut thing like really was memed well.
It
like,
was
for a lot of people. And the same thing with the weird stuff, right? Like Tim Walz calling people weird, like. Those were both kind of organic memes that sprung kind of accidentally out of that campaign. And for a second, that campaign capitalized on those things. But then they blinked, right? Like they blinked and they're like, but what if we got established?
Wheeled out Liz Cheney.
What if Liz Cheney was so like, it was like there was a glimpse of like, okay, here is how the Democratic Party could use memes to their own political ends. And in the end, I don't know what happened inside, but like it's clear that either someone had second thoughts or like some people were shuffled around or something, because by the end we were like running the same like third way playbook as like they've been doing for decades.
I don't know if the coconut thing was in any way intentional.
No, it was accidental. They were all
it's like they just kind of decided to coast on a wave that they found themselves on, which I think probably started with Charlie XCX tweeted Kamala is brat. And then they made the Kamala HQ website into like the brat chartreuse screen and all that stuff. But like you said, they backpedaled really hard. And yeah, I'm also restraining myself from going on a long tangent about the movie Weapons, because I feel like Weapons is also about this stuff.
Yeah.
But that's a conversation for another day.
Weapons is about the Kamala campaign. You heard it here first.
You don't need to read her book. Just watch Weapons.
Just watch Weapons. Do y'all have any other feels good man thoughts before we move on to our last movie?
I want to touch. You mentioned it at the top of being like this is the most enjoyable watch. It like all of the stuff that we described. You're like, how is this enjoyable? But it is like I think
it really is. Yeah,
and it really has this like serene ending that it's able to kind of like come to a conclusion that I think is really really moving and kind of not necessarily hopeful, but you do feel like this sense of like at least there was some like peace made for Matt Fury and like his creation and being able to move forward, because I can't imagine just like I drew a silly frog and now it's like
it's a hate symbol.
Yeah, it's a hate symbol, and it's like the trumpeter of the alt-right movement. It's a wild ride, but yeah.
I will say, I think that element of the movie weirdly makes it an artifact. Like that feels very early Biden era, like hope punk sort of thing. Like there's like an element of that movie, and we're about to go into another movie, and I think the movie that we're about to go into is obviously chronologically this is true, but I think like in terms of its ethos, it is the only one of these movies that is like a post-COVID internet movie. And I think that like the way that like the Feels Good Man movie resolves feels very like of its moment before like the bottom fell out of like the like, hey, we can maybe use courts to wrest back some of the excesses of the internet, or like, hey, we can find peace, despite the chaos of the internet. Like I really, that does feel good, man. But it feels suing Alex Jones,
plate shifting historical moment of the 21st century.
Yeah,
at least the second.
Yeah, at least the second.
Though Matt Fury is maybe a bit of a good role model of how an individual person's relationship to the internet ideally should be. You shouldn't pay all that much attention to what's happening on 4chan.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
Now, was he a little neglectful of how Pepe started getting co-opted from him in the early stages? Absolutely, but I don't think that anybody could have predicted what would have ended up happening to it.
It's the pitfalls of being that chilled out.
Yeah. You can only be so chill.
Jeez. Speaking of no chill, man.
Speaking of a movie that feels bad, man.
You can't mention simulation theory without mentioning the Matrix movies.
People were going crazy over it. The Matrix was real.
We are living in a simulation. We are being inhabited by some sort of player.
It's a game.
A world without rules and control.
What's the point of all this?
Everyone is fake.
I am not a body at all. I am the code. I am a string of numbers constantly replicating in some vibration.
None of this is real.
I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see.
Let's talk about A Glitch in the Matrix. This came out in 2021. It's by Rodney Asher. Filmmaker that I think is very underrated, by the way. He's only made a couple of movies. Room 237, The Nightmare, and this. But in my opinion, one of the most interesting documentarians in the industry right now. And I really want him to continue making movies. I don't know if he is or not, but let's get into it. He started to conceptualize a glitch in the Matrix while producing his previous documentary, The Nightmare, which is about sleep paralysis. One of his interview subjects asked Asher if he had heard of simulation theory, which he actually hadn't at the time. And he went and did his own research, and he said it opened up, quote, a whole other rabbit hole that I still haven't completely managed to crawl out of. He said his initial vision for the film would have been some sort of anthology film that he likened to The Twilight Zone. One of his first major points of research was the 2001 academic paper Are You Living in a Computer Simulation by Oxford professor Nick Bostrom, who's interviewed.
Ooh, hiss.
Oh, do you know more about this guy other than just what's in the movie?
Nick Bostrom? Yeah, he sucks.
What sucks about him?
He's a eugenicist. He's a
Oh.
or at least he has flirted with eugenics. He is AI, I believe, and anyway, whatever.
If the movie shows us anything, it is that believing in simulation theory is a slippery slope to lots of other bad thoughts and actions. So that doesn't surprise me all that much. Another heavy influence here is a 1977 lecture by Philip K. Dick titled "If You Find This World Bad, You Should See Some of the Others," which is not about simulation theory directly, but outlines many of its underlying principles pertaining to multiple universes. When asked if he personally subscribes to simulation theory, Asher said, "I wouldn't cop to it. My ambition with both films was to let the audience see things through the eyes of the people featured in them and to keep my own POV fairly discreet. At the end of the day, I don't have a more direct window into Kubrick's head in Room 237 or the nature of reality in this film than anyone else. So even if I thought that Group A was more right than Group B, that wouldn't make it so." When asked why he decided to depict many of his interview subjects as motion capture digital avatars, he replied, quote, "To me, using digital avatars felt like a way to comment on the fact that much of our person-to-person communication is already an artificial digital creation, from Zoom to GIFs to emojis to Snapchat filters, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. If, as some suggest, the simulation will be inevitably built sometime in the future, it feels to me that these things are steps along the way to getting there. Watching my son and his friends talk with one another about everyday elementary school life while embodied as robots, ninjas, and superheroes in Fortnite makes it pretty clear how comfortable we are operating in digital worlds." Asher also conducted an interview with murderer Joshua Cook over a prison payphone. And rather than depict him as a virtual avatar as well, which Asher said would be a little glib, he decided to show the events of the crime from an approximation of Cook's POV. The first cut of the film was 2 hours and 45 minutes. I am very grateful it was cut down by about an hour.
Can you imagine sitting in a 3-hour movie that's just all about this?
I could not. This was given a very limited theatrical run by Magnolia Pictures, during which it made $2,238.
To be fair, when was this? Like early 2021 or something?
2021.
Like that? Yeah, that's
so. Yeah,
it made a lot of
people going to
like $50,000 otherwise.
I got two kind of opposing critical quotes here. In The Guardian, Leslie Feltperin wrote, "What's missing from this fecund brew, which you could imagine being twice as long, is any kind of judgment or analysis of the subjects." And then in the Los Angeles Times, Noel Murray wrote, "While the doc may be overlong, it's consistently fascinating because of its implications." So is it too long or too short? We can't decide. I actually gave like a Movies You Saw This Week review of this movie back in 2021 when it first came out, so people can go check that out if they want to. I believe it was on our episode about the movie Orlando, starring Tilda Swinton. And I was genuinely freaked out by it when I first saw it. Like, I remember kind of walking around for a couple of days in a haze afterwards, just being kind of terrified of the idea of simulation theory, which I didn't subscribe to, but it's one of those ideas that's kind of like unfalsifiable. So if you allow yourself to like humor the idea enough, it can really like get under your skin. And I was glad to find that revisiting it now, I mostly just find all these people pathetic, which I was kind of cued into by Michael's like live chat of him watching this movie over Slack. So I'll just turn this over to you, Michael. Feel free to go off as much as you want about the interview subjects here.
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't want to be condescending to people who are unnerved by the idea, because it is an unnerving idea to imagine that you are Matrix style inside a false world that you're being enslaved in or whatever. Like that is an unsettling idea. As Andrew said, it's unfalsifiable, and so it's hard to disprove someone of this idea if they have it, and that can be I can imagine that being a really scary place to be. I have liked Rodney Asher's other films. At the time when I saw this in, I don't know, probably 2021 or 2022, I felt like his style is maybe not conducive to this subject matter, because it is not it's neither as subjective nor as whimsical as like his other two films. Not that
I would not describe either of those movies as whimsical.
I think The Shining movie is 100% whimsical. The sleep paralysis one obviously is not whimsical, but it is an entirely subjective experience, and so it makes sense to have people only sharing their thought, because his style is, let's just let all these talking heads roll. Like we're just gonna like present their ideas non-critically.
Let them sound insane.
Yes, and so like I do think that really works well when you're like, let's take these really off the wall, interpretations of The Shining, or let's let people describe what it is like to experience sleep paralysis and all their various like responses to that. And I think that it's a much rockier journey to have that happen with things that have resulted in real political and like with real death, real people have died or real people have been affected.
A murderer at one point.
Yeah, and I think that like watching this the second time, I was a bit less concerned with that, because I do think that like the movie includes voices that do have interesting analysis of like what these people are saying, such as comparing it to organized religion, or such as the guy who used to believe in simulation theory and has since thought, maybe this whole idea that I'm the one real person, all the NPCs, is really just a manifestation of my social anxieties and things like that. Like, I think that there are voices
he seems like he still believes in it too.
Yeah, but the fact that he can say that, which I think is the very obvious analysis of hearing people talk about NPCs.
Like socially maladjusted.
But like I do, and so anyway, I'm less concerned with that. That said, I find the majority of the proponents of simulation theory in this, which there are not everyone's a proponent. Mm-hmm. Like I think don't they like interview like Cory Doctorow at some point or something? There's like people who are skeptics who are just like tech writers or whatever. But like the people who are the proponents of it, who are like 90% of I just find them so, they're stupid. Like they're just so stupid. Like, and if it were with if they were approaching this with the idea of like, I can't stop thinking about this. This is like colonized my mind. Like it's become an obsession for me, which is how the actual killer Cook talks about it fairly lucidly at the end of this. If they had that posture, I think I would not be so irritated with them, because I can understand being spiraled, especially when you're like a younger person. But it's the self-impressed, like, oh, I'm the most rational person in the room sort of thing. It gets under my skin so much. These are the same sorts of people that I would imagine. Like at one point, this guy talks about like organized religion, and he's like, I looked at organized religion and I thought, this is kind of like just a game. And so his obvious conclusion is, therefore, it's just another part of the simulation. This is
I'm the only real person.
I'm the only real person, and all of this is just done for the hubris of that, the like solipsism of that, where it's like the only thing that is real is what is happening to me, caused by me. Like the like, I'm so smart because I can see through the facade, and I've seen through the facade to see that I'm actually inside the Matrix. Like, I just find that so unbelievably dumb. And like, to get to that point, they have to misinterpret the movie The Matrix. They have to misinterpret several philosophical texts. It's like all like, I took the most surface level reading of everything, and I thought, I saw The Matrix, which literally gives me like, has Neo show me a book that I actually looked up. And from that, I realized we were in the Matrix. Instead of actually reading the book, or instead of actually interpreting the film of The Matrix, his interpretation of The Matrix is, what is happening to Neo is happening to me, which is
Yeah,
the most childish way to engage with media, is that like everything in media is literal. But anyway, I just find it, I find the theory itself unfalsifiable and kind of dumb. Like, okay, we're in a simulation. This is literally the only reality we have. If this is a simulation, I don't see what this changes about anything.
That shouldn't change the way you interact with real people.
Yeah, because we have to live in the simulation. Like, there's no like door that leads us out of the simulation. You can't jump into the phone booth like in the Matrix unless you know something that I don't.
Right.
And so, like, on the one hand, I don't understand why this changes anything. And on the other hand, the posture that these guys have of being these rational minded, like STEM guys, and they like lionize Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And like,
that's another thing that makes it easier to kind of like brush aside now, because like Elon Musk has so thoroughly shown his ass to the entire world in the years since this came out.
Yeah, I think that like there's just this, especially in like STEM Silicon Valley people, but like broadly on the internet, there is this idolatry of like autodidacticism and this kind of like, you know, Joe Rogan-esque, like, what if man, you know, isn't that crazy? You know, that sort of, there's this like, that being the pinnacle of free thought on the internet that I think like this movie shows like just absolutely curdled to its most rotten, you know, sour way possible.
Yeah.
And I think Elon Musk is the perfect avatar for that. Elon Musk is a person who presents himself and to a lot of people seems to be smart and well-informed on a variety of topics, but in reality, he is very poorly informed on a lot of topics that he talks confidently on. And I think that these proponents of simulation theory are that in microcosm, where they are very confidently saying things that they don't actually know anything about. And it drives me crazy. Like, they are some of the most irritating people. And I think what drives me even crazier is that these are people who now are in power, not these specific people, but like this specific ethos.
This
like
type of guy.
This type of guy is now staffing like cabinet positions in the White House. It's like these type of people plus like Fox News personalities are what are making up like the regulatory bodies of the federal government now. And like, it drives me crazy.
I don't know if this type of guy specifically is staffing the White House. I think this type of guy is too just like socially inept to be wandering the halls of Congress in the first place.
I don't mean simulation theory people. I mean people who view themselves as like generalists and know a lot of stuff. Like RFK Jr. is trained in environmental law.
Yeah.
And he is in charge of like health and human services because he is, you know, funneled down this like internet adjacent pipeline of like the wellness industry where everyone thinks that they've done their own research and they're so smart and they've seen through the bullshit.
Yeah.
But really what they've done is just like internalized a lot of things they don't quite understand and spoken very confidently about that and spread their confidence as if it were a coherent idea. And I think simulation theory is the same sort of thing, even though it is not like a, you know, a platform of the federal government. Like the concept where I don't really understand these ideas, which largely are ideas that come out of post-Marxist theory that I've misinterpreted because I don't understand metaphor. And now I just think that instead of, you know, capitalism, I think that there is a real computer simulation. Right. And now I'm going to confidently base all of these general life decisions on this idea that because I'm so smart, I know a lot about. I don't know.
And when somebody like Elon Musk is asked to explain why he believes in simulation theory, his argument is, well, in the 70s or the 80s, I forget, we had Pong. And then, you know, fast forward 25 years, and now we have like fully immersive 3D video games. Therefore, you know, we will create perfect VR, and therefore we must already live in some sort of perfect VR simulation. And it really
it makes no sense. Like it makes like it doesn't even make sense that if you continue to scale up the graphical and computational abilities of a simulation, that conscious beings inhabit it. Like that is like we don't even know that. Like, and if you like you claim to have looked into AI, like you will find that the concept of consciousness is notoriously slippery. And like, what is even, we don't even understand what human consciousness is, much less an artificial conscience. And so, like, to act as if it is an inevitability that we will be able to create worlds populated by conscious beings that are like trapped in the simulation, like, it makes no sense as anything other than like you saw the Matrix and thought it was cool.
Or have just spent way too much of your life playing video games. And I say this as a person who loves playing video games and has spent like all of my downtime today playing video games. Like, this is a, you know, when all you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Everything looks like, oh, I'm this guy that I felt awkward walking by on the street one day. That's just because he's an NPC and he wouldn't have anything meaningful to say to me if I did try to talk to him, because I'm just realer than he is, you know? It's looking at everything through the lens of video games in a way that is just like really kind of toxic to one's own mental state.
Yeah, I said earlier this is like such a post-COVID movie, and I guess what I mean by that is this idea of being funneled into an information ecosystem that is so hermetically sealed that within it makes perfect sense and is life altering, but outside of it is impenetrable to anybody trying to understand why you're in there and like what you believe. You know, and I just think that like this is what so much of political discourse has become, is these, you know, I mean, we call them echo chambers, but I don't even really think that's like a super accurate, you know, it's not just like we're listening to other people. It's that the information environment has been bent around certain like ideological presuppositions, and it is impossible, you know, like it's Q, it's make America healthy again. It's, you know, any number of, you know, kind of sub overlap. It's evangelical Christianity, like any number of overlapping subcultures that are so funneled into their own ideological like chamber.
There's like an orthodoxy that emerges, right?
Right, the orthodoxy but the epistemological collapse that comes out of it. It's not just because I hear a lot of times people talk about echo chambers like, oh, you just got to talk to people from other. It's like, no, when you talk to other people from other chambers, you realize we do not live in the same universe. Like,
you have two different like fundamental beliefs to be able to communicate.
Right. And like, I mean, maybe the biggest, like maybe the only accurate way that we're actually living in simulations is the idea that we've allowed our little information environments, our information ecosystems on the internet to define an entire world for us that is in a way like simulated. And I don't exactly know how to get out of it, because everything that we do, all of our information, even through like legacy media, largely comes through the internet. Like, you know, I can't think of a person in my life who doesn't largely get all of their information through the internet. And in order to get things through the internet, you have to have, you know, a pathway through that, right? And we all have our own pathways that I think have created virtual worlds projected onto the real world. And that I don't know, it's very depressing to me, and it makes me mad because like I don't know how to get out of it. I don't know how to talk to people who are like so ensconced in this stuff. But it is also so clear that like the people who are deeply ensconced in this stuff, like there's an arrogance in like, no one can tell me except myself and the other people.
The real truth.
Right. I am the true, you know, I'm the real thing. Like I have seen through the pandemic, and I know that it is fake. I have seen through whatever. Like there's so many ways in which these like blathering people who've been given this inordinate confidence in their own knowledge, vaccines, like any of this stuff, like,
I mean, take it all the way back to fucking Plato, right? You know, so much of this stuff goes back to Plato's allegory of the cave. And this is also a guy who's just high on his own supply a little bit, right? He just thinks that I've pierced the veil And because I understand some things about philosophy that most people don't know, therefore me and people like me should be in charge of the entire society. And we should like be able to do eugenics and stuff because we're the only people who see the light and like the correct direction that the world needs to head in.
Well, and I think like what differentiates you're right that that's the ethos of Plato that is also replicated here. But the thing that is even more depressing is like Plato has like a legitimate claim to being an expert on a certain kind of like philosophical mode of thought.
Right.
Whereas I think that like there's this faux expertise that comes from being in these online ecosystems that I think is deeply unnerving, because that is like a key function of the epistemological collapse, is that we cannot agree on like who gets to have say. You know, like every fucking doctor in the fucking world thinks that you should vaccinate your kids against measles and like, you know, MMR and like whatever. Like, but the people who are like autodidacts online have decided, no, actually we shouldn't. And the people who don't know anything about vaccines have decided to become experts in vaccines to say, no, we shouldn't. And like somehow that is as powerful as like the institutions of knowledge. And like, if you're like a lot of this like simulation language comes from a world in which there was like a truly hegemonic control of information and knowledge.
It's like a dominant narrative.
Right. And so there was genuinely a discourse projected onto reality that like people fell into. And like the discourse was that of like capitalism and like, you know, Western colonialism and like this kind of like Western rationality that like, you know, had a kind of like, you know, Western chauvinism to it. And like, there is a real critique to be made of like institutions, particularly like those kind of mid-century post-war institutions that like presented themselves as like the good guys as opposed to the third world or as opposed to the Soviet Union or whatever. You know, like there's a legitimate critique to be made of institutions like that. But what has happened is the language of that critique has been co-opted and used in these extraordinarily impoverished information ecosystems, such that like there is the sense of we are seeing through the veil without the substantive, like we actually have like a true epistemic grasp of like what the veil is. And you know, I'm sure like someone could just say like, well, yeah, but that's just you talking in your own ecosystem, you know, you're left wing, like whatever. And I suppose that that's true. But
yeah, we're all in some sort of media ecosystem.
I suppose that's true. But unless we completely cede this kind of epistemic nihilism and say there is no way to know anything.
Yeah.
As soon as you say we have a way to know something, you have to actually know something like that.
Yeah. And you know, there is an imbalance in you know, which side has more grasp of the truth, right? Like in the question of what causes autism, it is just flatly wrong to say it's Tylenol, right?
Or vaccines. Like and I don't know. So anyway, I think simulation theory as an idea is just like, it's just like a thought experiment, just like Rocco's Basilisk or any of these other like the rationalist community sort of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I understand like you just mulling this stuff over, and like it can be fun to mull this stuff over. You know, I used to think like, wouldn't it be cool if like there actually were doorways to Narnia inside furniture? Like, you know, when I was 7, I thought that was cool to think about, but I didn't like wrap my whole life around it. And like, I guess that is what is so deeply infuriating to this movie, or to me in this movie, is that these are people who are adults and who have enough power and wherewithal to have not just come up like mulled over this idea that is just kind of like, you know, it's just food for thought, right?
Mm-hmm.
But they have enough power, or the people, or some of these people have enough power to have remade political systems around their own conceptions of like the strength of their reason. And I just think it's so deeply dangerous, and not just because it creates like shooters and stuff like this movie depicts, but because it creates this ethos of I am the only real person. I am the only, I'm the big brain.
And a couple of years ago, I actually ran into the issue of some of my students using that language of like referring to people as NPCs. Like, oh gosh, this actually is darker than I anticipated. There was a kid who like played the ukulele out in front of the school every morning. And I remember kids referring to him as an NPC because he's just like, there doing the thing that he always does every morning. And that kid committed suicide. And like, I don't know his story, right? Like I didn't really know or have that kid. So I don't know like to what extent that sort of bullying maybe informed that decision for him. But like, I was very adamant about shutting that kind of talk down when I heard people refer to other people as NPCs, because it's just like incredibly dehumanizing, just on its face, right? But I fear that we have maybe not talked about the actual movie A Glitch in the Matrix enough.
Sorry. You set me loose.
What's that?
You set me loose.
I set you loose.
Yeah.
But regardless of like the quality of the theory that is simulation theory, I do think this is a powerful documentary that is like a good case study in Rodney Asher's style of just like letting people themselves, go a little bit loose and just kind of share their deepest held beliefs and subjective experiences.
And also doing it through the visual language of games and the internet. Like I think it's fairly
like most of the visuals you're seeing are either from video games or from movies or these like rotoscoped motion capture avatars that he's created for the talking heads. And it's just like a really I don't know, you do feel like you're kind of swimming through cyberspace a little bit in kind of like the Johnny Mnemonic sense when you're watching this. And it's good, but you should definitely like not watch it in a bad headspace because it would make it much worse. You need to, I think Rodney Asher is trusting his audience to come to the movies with a very skeptical eye, right? And not take what's given to them from the talking heads as truth, which I think is like an important kind of lesson to learn about documentaries in one way or another.
Right. It also ends with, well, one of the final sequences is when the dude kills his family.
Harrowing,
truly harrowing, all done in like a video game-esque like looking environment. But I think that like ending the documentary or like having that be one of the last things that the documentary does, I think does firmly ground the movie in like, hey, these are not good ideas. These are not like ideas that are
this is like the logical
pro-social
endpoint. Yeah. And you would not think that drowning pools let the bodies hit the floor could be deployed in like a genuinely horrifying way, but it can. And this movie is proof of that. Anyways, we should wrap up. Thank you for listening to this episode of Cinematary. We should thank our patrons, who I once again do not have a list of in front of me. But as Zach is bringing it up, I will say that if you are not a patron of us on patreon.com/cinematary, you could become a patron and get a whole other show that we put out once a month called Movies We Saw This Month. That is what we're doing with kind of the old Movies You Saw This Week Cinematary format. If you want to hear our thoughts on the current cinema, including Weapons and Eddington and probably One Battle After Another eventually, you can find that on the Patreon feed. But Zach, who are our patrons?
By the time this airs, I feel like those should be on there for you.
Those will be out by the time this airs. Yeah.
Thank you to our patrons: Cam, Grace Winburn, who still hasn't canceled her account.
Embarrassing.
She's in Italy now. Can't do that.
Ron Hayes, Sam Shapiro, Tanner Huskins, Teresa Marsathi, and Tyler Chandler. We appreciate the patronage. And $5 a month. We got some good, and once this series runs, you'll have a bunch of goodies. I'm sure people who are keeping up with it, there'll be some goodies. You can follow along, watch videos, things like that. So
We got 3 more episodes left in this series. The movies do get more fun after this, I promise. The next episode is called Cybercrime, and we're talking about movies about the internet and the law. So we're going to be talking about The Bling Ring, Black Hat, Eye in the Sky, and Zola. Very much looking forward to talking about those. Yeah, that's all we got.
3 out of 4 fun movies.
3 out of 4 fun movies. One of them, not so much. Not so much. But anyways, thank you for listening. We will see you next week.